What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall's complimentary podcast, the Ask A CISSP podcast. So typically, if you watch the show, we have our 3 episodes. We have 2 topics in discussion, and then the 4th episode being everything else, right? So we talk about movies, books, games, all that good stuff. What I like to do with this one is more of a conversational interview type podcast where we kind of still go through the same thing. We talk about the person's background, their origin story, all that good stuff, as well as what they do on their off time. So thank you for continuing to listen to these. I believe this will be the 4th or 5th one this year. So with that being said, obviously the show is to highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. And speaking of that type of person, today we have a special guest. So if you can just briefly run down who you are, your background, your cybersecurity origin story, and then kind of the role you fulfill now.
All right, so my name is Daryl Brooks. I am a recently certified CISSP. So I've worked for the federal government, have worked for the federal government for 20 years now. My background ranges from help desk to lab attendants to cybersecurity technical writing to what else? I've done a few networking related, cable management related things. So it ranges from that, but surprisingly, nothing like too technical. So when I go into my origin story, I mean, if you're expecting for me to tell you something like, you know, I did 3 years of in the SOC and then another 5 years, you know, as a server admin, no. I'm basically the guy that sat in front of a bunch of closed doors and eventually started picking them because I got tired of waiting on the opportunity, started creating my own opportunities. So first round, I'm gonna say I watched a few of your previous episodes of Ask A CISSP, and there was particular ones with Matisha and with James. Some of the questions that they asked, they heavily resonated with me because they really spoke to my overall experience and even what I'm continuing to kind of face now in the present. So I wanted to kind of come from that angle when I'm telling my origin story, so those listening, they can kind of hear my story and not feel discouraged, but feel that they could go through whatever they're going through now and still be able to reach that goal of getting that CISSP if that's what they want. So the line of questioning that I was referring to was the how to get the 4 to 5 years experience everyone's looking for, even when you have those in-demand certifications and just some hands-on experience, but not a lot. So I know exactly what they're talking about. Again, that's been like the majority of my experience.
Okay, so just for a frame of reference, so you said Matisha Harper. So Tish, she was a amongst a lot of things, right? Baker, mom. She's also she was a flight attendant. She had her pilot license, but a lot of the conversation was she was trying to break into cybersecurity from that perspective. And then with James, if my memory serves me correctly, he was into geoscience and I believe data science as well. And he was trying to break into cybersecurity as well. And both of them are doing very well, by the way. So, I mean, it does, it shows that you don't have to go the traditional route to get in. But with that being said, so now that people, in case they haven't watched, so if they have not watched, you should go back. You should listen to these episodes, right? This is gold right here. But from your perspective, so how would you answer those questions? How would you express to people how you broke into cybersecurity?
Almost exactly the way you answered them. I mean, I took notes. So just the way that you told them to apply anyway, I absolutely agree. I just time at time just apply. The worst they could ever tell you is no. And they keep adding to your knowledge. So when I go into my origin story, that's pretty much the basis of what I did. It's just continuing to add on to to my knowledge. I remember when you're talking to Matisha, you mentioned there's people with a bunch of letters after their name, and they tend to do that. I'm guilty as charged. But there was a method to my madness, and it really helped me when going for the CISSP, which I'm going to touch on. And then though the critical areas I think that I really like in your response with her is giving yourself experience. Not waiting on a job opportunity, but finding ways in which you can do that. Where she sounded like she was doing a lot of it was like volunteering and doing those labs. And then also making those meaningful connections, getting to know people that look like where you're trying to go, or that's in the organizations that you're in, trying to understand how did they get there, what are those organizations looking for, and always having a person inside that can, that can give you the 411 and any sort of opportunities coming up or initiatives coming up that can help you get your foot into the door, and then also get your foot into the door. So it doesn't, like you were saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most technical position. It doesn't have to look like exactly where you're trying to go. It may not even have to be a tech position, but if it could get you into proximity or into the place that you want to go, that's movement. That's still success, because you're one step closer into being where you want to be. That was pretty much like how, just going off of what you were telling her, with that I would agree with.
Right.
Yeah,
a lot of it is passion and interest, right? Like, so if you don't have a technical background and you want to get in one of these positions, it helps to have some kind of adjacent knowledge, right? So like you're bringing your soft skills, which if you watch the interview this week with Kevin, a lot of what he brought into the help desk came from his work in customer service, because he was in restaurant business, and then he pivoted into law enforcement. He was 4 years NYPD, right? And neither one of those were extremely technical, but he was able to take those soft skills that he had learned in those positions and take those to the help desk, and then perform very well. And now he's doing great things. He's a leader within his field, and he has like over 400 videos on YouTube and 50,000 subscribers, right? Because it's him teaching people skills as well as how to apply the skills they already have, which is absolutely true, regardless. So I like what you said about the connections as well, right? With LinkedIn connections and finding somebody who's doing what you currently want to be doing. Because again, that shows that you have interest. It's kind of the cheat code, right? Like you get to find out what they particularly did. Like everybody's path can be different, but at least you kind of know, okay, these things set you up for this position. But then, like you said, you have an inside man or woman who could potentially maybe find you something within the company, or they may know someone who has an opening. And it's not guaranteed, right? I know a lot of people get discouraged. They're like, oh, I gave my resume to this person, they couldn't get me hired. But that's just one person out of the millions that are on LinkedIn that you potentially be networked with, that they could potentially get you into a spot. So I think those are all good things that you brought up.
Thank you. So I guess if I were to get into my origin story, so I'm not gonna tell my whole life story, but I'm gonna kind of start from high school to where I'm at now. But I'm gonna abbreviate things into a bit to make it all relevant.
Okay,
All right,
gotcha.
so I guess to start my origin story. So from high school, so I had an interest in technology or in computers, but I was kind of real scared or insecure into admitting that I did. 'Cause I didn't want to get that label as computer nerd. So things like video games and stuff like that was cool to talk about. I kind of stuck with that, but I did secretly was into computers. But I think I really kind of broke out of my shell with that once I got into college, specifically my sophomore year. Once I seen that our academic computing office, I'm sorry, I went to I'm a graduate of Delaware State University. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Management Information Systems there. also graduate of Bowie State University, another HBCU, where I got my graduate degree in information security management. But so back to my sophomore year, I decided to apply for that position, which was pretty much a office clerk. But I would still be assisting students with setting up their with their on-campus accounts as far as logging into the system there, as far as being able to check their grades and things of that nature, and being able to access their email. So I interviewed for the position and I got it. So I worked that job for a while, and so as I was starting to help people doing that, that's when I really started noticing that I had an interest in a real interest in IT, and at this point I hadn't declared my major yet. So it was that experience, and also my mom, she was kind of helped me look into things, and she just really saying, well, look, you don't have to go into computer science, 'cause I want to stay as far away from coding as possible. So she said, what about management information system? It's like business and and technology. So it was those things that where I finally declared my major as management information systems, which didn't really hurt, because I was already I wasn't undeclared, so I was a business major before that. But it was a seamless transition, because all my business classes that I took before then kind of transferred over into that major. So it was a real easy transition. And then I would say from there, I began doing my summer interns, my internships, where that's where I first started my federal career, with the United States Park Police well, first as a project management intern, and then as an internal auxiliary officer, where I was like just guiding cars around the park. And then the internal auxiliary position, I think I was just like editing like general orders for the higher ups to look at, once you get in front of them, things like that. But that's what started me on my federal career. And as we were talking before the show, I knew I wanted to stay federal. My parents, both of them, were former federal employees. But I guess when I look back, as far as whatever it is that I do, being able to see that tangible result or that fulfillment, I think the federal sector definitely scratches that itch for me. And then throughout college, I had other internships, FTC. That's when I got more into the IT aspect of things, kind of helping record HVAC requirements for the data centers, helping with network cabling, which was an experience of its own. I mean, literally having to label one end of a network cable to the other, and then having to make sure they go into the right server. It was, that was an adventure. So I went through that in college. So I knew I definitely was on the right track as far as getting into IT, getting into the federal government. So I know I wanted to go, okay, I didn't want to take a break. I just wanted to I know I wanted to go into grad school. I know I wanted to do that right away. A higher degree, higher GS level in the federal government. So I know I wanted all those things. So this was like around, kind of telling my age a bit, this was like around 2006. So the word cybersecurity wasn't heavily used back then. Everything was mostly information security. So when I kind of researched that and found out exactly what it was all about, it just kind of clicked for me. Like, that's it. That kind of makes sense as far as what it is that I want to do here in the federal government. I couldn't really see myself being the guy that just goes around fixing everybody's computer all day. I knew I wanted something bigger and better than that, but I was still kind of learning the field, still kind of learning what my options are. And when I found out about, okay, protecting information, protecting data, protecting the infrastructure. It kind of all came together for me as far as what it is that I ultimately wanted to do. So then I went into grad school, went back home. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland, which is the metropolitan area, the DC area. Gotcha. And started going to Bowie State University, where again I studied information security management, in which it was that was an excellent experience. It was the program, I want to say, was still kind of in its infancy at the time, but it was still great. And I like the fact that going there, the Bowie State had job fairs where a lot of federal agencies would come on campus and, you know, basically recruit for internships. And going back to what we were saying earlier about networking, I really like that because I was able to like actually meet some of the branch chiefs like on site, or some of the recruiters on site. They were able to put a face to a name. They were able to put a face to a conversation. So it wasn't just like I was submitting my resume and just walking off. It was, I was giving them my resume, talking about my experience, and they were able to put a face with a name. Like when I would follow back up with them, the person, you know, the point of contact said, "Oh yeah, I remember talking to you. You know, you said this, and this." And a lot of times, that's how I was able to land some of those, some of those internships. So I actually landed internship through a program back then called the STEP program. I think it's called the Pathways program now. But I was a STEP intern for the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services. Again, not a technical internship, but again, DHS. And that, I mean, DHS was fairly new back then. So this is still me getting my foot into the area that I'm looking to get into, the federal government. And then you talk about the DHS protecting the homeland. So again, proximity. So did a year of that. During this time, while I was doing that, I started trying to go for these IT certifications. So went to a little place in my area, which was great there. They called Train Ace. They were called Academy of Computer Education back then. Did an excellent job as far as getting me hands-on experience, as far as get my A+. Showed me literally how to take a computer apart, put it back together again, troubleshoot an operating system, and then troubleshooting a network, learn about certain network things. And I took those tests and I failed them. I failed all three of them. I failed both A+, both network pluses. I mean, not both network, the one network plus, the two A+ exams. So that was a bit discouraging for me, and it was like a long time before I even tried to take any certifications exams again. But I did graduate from Bowie State with my master's, and towards the end of that, I landed my first full-time IT government job with the Social Security Administration.
Before you go into that, I do appreciate you actually admitting that the tests were hard and that you didn't accomplish it the first time, right? Because a lot of people don't like to bring that up, and I think it's factual, right? Like these tests are not made for you just to pass them. These tests are made to challenge and try to figure out the knowledge that you currently have, and then obviously there's also some testisms in there as well. You kind of have to know, like, how does CompTIA do their tests? How does CISSP
exactly,
like, because they're not all the same. But no, so you said that you were able to land that first position.
So yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to touch on in this origin story. Is just along with the successes, I want people to know about my failures. I want people to know about my mistakes. So if they're making those same having those same failures and same mistakes, it's okay. I mean, it's perfectly normal. So yeah, I started at SSA. Let me go to my notes to make sure I want to be able to say everything here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I started SSA, then okay, I kind of got back into the frame of mind. Okay, let's try to do these certs again. So I went to a program at Georgetown. Actually, the last time Georgetown had this program, where it's called the multi-certificate program, and Security Plus was one of those certificates. So I entered the Security Plus portion of it. And the way that I was looking at it is, okay, I already have a security degree. Now let's try to get a security certification. And plus it's Georgetown. So now I could have an Ivy League school like on my resume. And hey, I'm a student of an Ivy League school, good resume builder. When those recruiters or when those AI bots scan my resume, they're gonna see an Ivy League school. So, which to this day they can still see that. Study for that again. Great program. Took my A+ again, failed it again. So I would say that I was at SSA for 12 years. So my first 6 years, I usually describe it as a place of a place of complacency. But I kind of want to give a bit more grace to myself because of how young I was and how much I had going on at the time. So within those first 6 years, I bought my first home. I had graduated with my master's degree. I got married, and I was making pretty good money for my age. So I got caught up in all of that, and so my goal of getting into information security kind of went by the wayside, because in this job I was doing more batch file scheduling and testing, which I mean is a rabbit hole. I try to go into exactly what that is, but I put it to you this way: it was a bit far from information security, but it was comfortable. I was real comfortable. But I had reached a point, I was saying about 2006 to 2014, 15, which is like going on to that other 6 years that I was there. Well, I got kind of to the point where, okay, you know what? I want to clean some things up in my life. And so, I mean, from professionally to personally. So I really started to focus on, on the professional side, on getting into cybersecurity, because I liked having my job, but man, the fulfillment, it just wasn't there. And I just feel like I was just sitting there every day, man. It's just like, sitting and wasting away in this cube just cannot be the rest of my life. And it's no offense to SSA, because I really appreciate them just giving me the opportunity, and and all the co-workers I met there and everything. But it's just like, just that thing inside of you that just never went away, and you just been neglecting it, and it just came back up. So that year, I really I was looking for programs, mainly online programs, in which I could get back into studying specifically for my A+ and my Security Plus. So I actually found an online program, and so I started with the A+, and in December of 2015, I had finally got my A+ certification. So that started with me pressing my foot on the gas, and for literally for the next 6 years, I did not let up. So it was A+, then Sec+, then Net+, then ITIL, Project Plus. I mean, I landed a bunch of, between 15 and 17, I landed like a bunch of IT certifications, because I just kept studying nonstop. And the thing for me, which caused me to do that, is because that frustration or that lack of fulfillment that I was feeling, that I was able to tap into some other areas before, in which I was able to use the same energy that got me through those situations to help me motivate me to get through these. So like when I was in high school, I ran track and cross country. So I was a distance runner. So you have to have endurance. You have to kind of be strong-minded to kind of get through those races. And then college, I presided over a line that was the founding line of a business fraternity, in which was in pretty intense process as far as getting 39 other students from one place to another by the end of the school year. So taking those, and then family planning, because me and my wife decided we wanted to have a kid. So then we had to clear out some debt. So tapping into all of those things, all of those things where I had to really kind of dig deep and have a certain level of motivation to kind of get through those things and make it through those things. I tapped into that when it came to getting these certifications and just keeping going, not stopping. Once I get one, moving on to another. And I would choose, I guess I would choose the certification that I chose based upon some areas of interest that I wanted to go into in the IT, cybersecurity. So I knew I wanted to go into some technical ends, but at the same time, I knew I wanted to give myself the option to go into management, or at least project management. So, I would get the technical certifications like A+, Sec+, Net+, but at the same time, I got like the Project Plus and the ITIL, the service management certifications, as a way to kind of give myself as many options as possible once I was able to finally break in. So
what was that pivot like then? So did you complete all of these certifications before you made the pivot into cyber, or were you already working towards it while you're accomplishing the certs?
So while I was doing that, I talked to my supervisor. So they actually made me a security, I guess you could consider a security admin, where I was doing a lot of access control, privilege management. So basically, as people came in or they left or their job roles changed, I would basically assign them their profiles and things of that nature to make sure that wherever they were, whether they weren't here anymore, whether they were just onboarding, or whether they moved to a different area, that I was helping to maintain that they have those right privileges, that they were respecting the least privilege of the agency, the least privilege standard of the agency.
And that was why you were still at the Social Security Administration.
Right. That's why I was still at Social Security Administration. That's while I was working on those certifications. And also while I was working on those certifications, I landed a detail with our Office of Information Security, where I worked with the audit team, where they had a external audit with, I think it was with Grant Thornton at the time. So it really exposed me to the not really so much technical, but it exposed me to the whole I lost my train of thought.
No, you're good. So that, I mean, it kind of from what I'm hearing, it kind of exposed you to the I would say like the identity access management, to when it comes down to the audits, I guess maybe it's the
there you go. That's what
the GRC, right? The governance, risk, compliance.
Yes. So with the audits, that's what I was trying to think of. I don't know why my mind went blank there. So I was kind of like the middle liaison between tracking the artifacts going from certain parts of the agency into the auditor's hands and tracking those. Okay, who sent what artifacts and what artifacts they need. And then I know management, they wanted me to be able to display, the certain processes and the audit, and how the internal audit team interacted with the external audit team. So that exposed me to a lot of that, which everything was going pretty good up to that point. And then around 2019, I had landed another detail, which was more technical. But then we had like a hiring freeze, and and something happened with the paperwork, and long story short, I moved my stuff to one floor one day, and 2 days later, because of something administrative, I had to go right on back. And so at that point, I had just super frustrated again. Started kind of looking internally and externally for positions in the government. And I kept seeing, though, everything I was looking at, they wanted someone who was at least a CISSP. So finally I said to myself, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time that I've got some years under my belt doing this stuff. So I'm going to finally start to try to study for this thing. So I did. So what I did, I used some money that I put together. I saved for my side hustle. And usually I'm kind of embarrassed to say this. It's one of those mistakes that I said I made that I want to share with people, is that I saved up $7,000 and paid for a CISSP prep program. Don't ever do that. Don't ever throw money. Don't ever try to just throw money at your goals. And I'm not going to say it was a pretty popular program. I'm not going to say whose program it is, because they're well known in the industry. They're a pretty popular program. But as far as what worked for me and my study methodology, it was in conflict with it. I mean, I got a bunch of on-demand videos. They had a textbooks for each of the eight domains, which actually I did end up utilizing when I finally passed it. But it's just, I guess their approach or their method really didn't work for me. What typically worked for me when I was passing the certification exams were those practice exams, really gaining an understanding for what it is that they're looking for. Or, okay, that repetitiveness, and I would learn not just by reading the text, but I would learn by reading those questions, what things are associated with certain subject matters. When I see certain keywords, picking up on those patterns, okay, here's what they're looking for. Or when they say this, they're looking for they're looking at this particular subject matter. So that's typically the strategy that I use as far as passing the exams. But I kind of was trucking through that, and while I was doing that, I decided to take my I think it's the CISA plus beta. I think they had came out with their second version, and I took the beta for that. So I took that, and when you take a beta, you have to wait a few months before you get the results. So by this time, COVID had hit. So I did a pivot during COVID, and I focused a lot on my financial goals that my wife and I had set. And so a lot of that, we were looking at finally just paying off the last of our debts again, doing family planning again, child number 2. So I ended up finding out during that time that I passed the CISA Plus beta. So I felt like that it gave me permission to kind of put the CISSP on the back burner, because I guess the way that I was looking at is that, hey, all this studying that I did for the CISSP did amount to something, because I was able to pass the CISA Plus beta and apply some of that knowledge to that. So I got kind of got distracted, but got distracted by productive things, but really wasn't focusing on my career maybe like I should have, but definitely knocked out a lot of those financial goals during COVID. And at this point too, I had onboarded to the agency that I'm at now. So the time between when before COVID hit and when I had taken that CISA Plus beta, I had interviewed with where I'm at now, which again, going back to the whole utilizing relationships thing. Right. My wife, one of her coworkers, her boyfriend worked for the agency. I sent her my resume. She sent him my resume. They were actually hiring his section. I interviewed with him, and basically he gave me a job offer. So again, that's why I'm really big into really just networking, really into utilizing those relationships.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good key points, right? Like, so when it comes to you believe your path to not be too technical. It still is. I mean, you weren't wrist deep inside computers all day, right? Like, you weren't necessarily, you didn't come up through IT help desk, but you still have experience, like you said, working in a NOC or something like that, where you had to trace cables and manage connectivity of servers and things of that nature. So you still have elements of that. And believe it or not, the CISSP is still considered a technical certification, even though it doesn't feel that way, right? But like the CISM is more managerial than the CISSP. But when you go to apply to certain jobs, like I do see a lot of them say, we want a technical background with a CISSP. And you're like, well, I don't really feel like CISSP is too technical, but comparatively to the rest of the exams, it's very technical. But so I want to kind of hit back on the connections piece of it. So you were already in the federal government. So that's a path that a lot of people don't really look at, right? Like regardless of what department you're in, whether it be Homeland or it be the Postal Service or what have you, once you have your foot in the federal door, it makes it where you can have the conversation. Okay, I want to pivot between different agencies. I've already been vetted. I don't think a lot of people see it that way. So I think that's a good thing that you brought that up. Just getting into the federal government itself is getting into a door that leads to many other doors that you could potentially pivot through. So you may not have been fulfilled by your initial, job with the SSA, but it opens that door for you to be able to pivot to other agencies within the federal government, which I think is awesome. And it's a venue that I don't see a lot of people necessarily pursuing, at least the ones I'm talking to, because like you said, you went through the STEP program. I think now it's called Pathways. And people have the ability to jump on these things. They just don't know they exist, right? Especially if you're out there searching for your Sec Plus, your Net Plus, your CISA. These are all certifications that the DoD is like chomping at the bit for.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something actually I forgot to mention. So the advantage when in the government, when I was getting my grad degree, is that when I did that internship for DHS, so because I had some graduate post bachelor education, it made me eligible for a higher level GS level. So I think that that internship, it started at a GS5, but I was eligible for a 7 just because I was already in grad school. And so
Gotcha.
once I started, and then I forgot to mention with SSA, I was actually in a program called the FCIP program. I think all that's under the Pathways program now, where basically, even though it was a full-time IT a federal job, it was a probationary period for 2 years. So, but within those 2 years, you moved up a GS level each year. So because I had already had my graduate degree, again, I started out at a higher GS level from the get-go. So those 2 years, then I went up two GS levels higher than what I would have if I didn't have that grad degree. So that's why I'm in agreement with what you're saying, is that there was a direct benefit to being in the federal government while I was in grad school, because I mean, just simply being in grad school got me access to higher pay. And I mean but when you're in the government, I mean, that follows you. So
right, absolutely. And you're building that federal resume as you go, which we talked about offline. The federal resume is no joke. So that's the only like, everything else I'm going to say is optimistic. That federal resume, though, that takes a lot of effort to build out, right? They want to know your whole life history, and then how does that apply to the thing that you're applying for? But no, I think that's all good stuff, especially to share with people who are listening, who are trying to break in, right? There's so many different pathways to get in here, because you went, like you said, you're a college graduate, you had some federal internships under your belt, and then having a higher level, having your grad allowed you to skip, and we keep saying GS like everybody knows what that is. So
Oh,
I think it's general schedule. It's the pay grades that the federal government pays out. So like me being from the DoD side, right? Our pay grades are either enlisted or you're an officer, right? You're E1, O1, what have you, and that dictates how you get paid. And then every so many years you get a raise. It's very similar, I guess, in the agency as well when it comes to the GS levels and how they pay you. So it's definitely something that people should look into if they're trying to get their foot in the door, because the opportunities are amazing, as well as is the retirement, right?
absolutely.
So when you look at the end of the day, like yeah, your friends might be bringing home the bag right now, but there's certain things in the federal government, certain protections that you have, as well as certain paths to retirement that you'll have as well. So your friends are out there buying Maseratis, but then where's their where is their 401k at, right? You know what I mean? Like, what are they going to have when they get done with their
It's
service?
funny
So,
you say that. I have a buddy of mine that has a Maserati, so I don't want him to think
oh no,
that
we
I
didn't have that
told you something
conversation.
about him. So
It's
no,
just
we didn't talk
coincidence.
about you, man.
No, so I'm thinking
So-
Maserati because I watched Kev on Stage. Kev on Stage is a comedian. He came up through social media channels,
yeah.
but he always wanted a Maserati, and he finally got one, right? Like he blew up. He has his own studio. Like Kev on Stage is making money.
Oh yeah.
And he lost the key, and just to get the key replaced was $400. He was like, Maserati didn't let me.
Bro, you have no idea. Dude, I just had this conversation with that same buddy this weekend and he lost his key. So I do
Oh
not want him
wow.
to think
Oh man, it's all types of
I told you
parallels. Is he Kev on
anything.
Stage? Like,
No,
was
he's
your
not
friend?
kept on stage. No, he may think he is, but he's not.
Gotcha. But yeah, so
No, he literally like lost his keys and he told me the same thing you told me. Like it costs like that much
yeah,
money to
it's a lot
replace
of
his
money.
keys.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
and he's a comedian, so he's able to use his content and what have you. But yeah, it's shocking. I was like, man, $400 for a key, that's like a couple tires on a regular car.
exactly. Exactly.
But
Um,
so I don't want to cut you off,
oh no, no.
because it's definitely going into some good places. Like we talked about connections, we talked about having a non-technical background, and then how you pivoted into cybersecurity, information security, all that great stuff, um, as well as how you didn't have certifications off the jump, and then you worked towards getting those to land a position that you currently have and that you really wanted, right? But that didn't necessarily hold you back, because people say, well, what's better? Is it education? Is it experience? Is it certifications? It's all the above, but it also depends on the path that you're taking, right? You're able to get to so far with one of those three, if not two of those three. And if you want the dream job, you have to get all three of those three, potentially. Just depends on, again, opportunities that you have, the connections that you've made. Like you said, you had a connection in that you knew someone who was able to get your resume to a hiring manager at some point, right? And a lot of people don't necessarily see the value in those connections. Like LinkedIn is a humongous source for making those connections. Like it's not going to be that you make one connection on LinkedIn and then you get the dream job, right? You're showing your passion, you're showing your hobbies. Like you said, you did a bunch of interning. And then when I talked to Tish and James and people like that, and Kevin, they're doing not necessarily pro bono work, but it's work outside the scope of what they're currently doing, right? So yes, it does sound like a lot of work, but it takes a lot of work to get to the positions that you want, right? You have to show that passion, that ingenuity. Like, okay, like my job. I think Kevin said that. Uh, um, was it Kevin or was it? I forget who it was. So I don't want to put words in his mouth. But one of them, or no, it was Boyd Clueless. So I haven't had him on the show yet, but I've watched a lot of his material. And he was asking to do work that was outside the scope, right? Like, let me fix these things. Like, I know it costs a lot of money for these PCs to be serviced. You have to send them away, then we're down, as opposed to me putting my hands on it and trying to fix those things to keep us back up. And that showed ingenuity, and it showed that he had a passion for it. And it was a little bit easier for him to pivot and doing what he wanted to do at that point.
Just to piggyback on that, there's some things that some other things that I did. I actually had it's a kind of an obscure certification now, but at one time CompTIA was offering a social media security certification. So one thing I had did that once I had gotten that, I had wrote an article for my church's magazine, which was telling parents about I used my knowledge from that and helping to write this article, telling parents about some of the dangers and stuff that's on social media, and really trying to educate them on some technical and non-technical threats that were really out there in ways that they could help mitigate, the risk of that when they're, when their kids are online, or just making them familiar with what those things are. And I also taught some classes on that at the church. So I definitely know what you mean about having to do some things to kind of give yourself that experience, or some pro bono work, things of that nature,
Right.
to
You're
help,
pretty much
engage
generating
with
your own
them.
experience at that point,
Yep.
right? Like, yeah, you didn't get paid for it. However, now you have more content, or you learn something new that you can apply somewhere else. And then it goes into, you can, it just depends on you and your passion. Like, just don't do things just because you think that everyone else is doing it, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, you have to know how to code. Not necessarily. I'm a computer science dropout. Like, I hit a level of math where I could not exceed it without
Man.
without spending an extraordinary amount of time. I did not have the patience at the time, right? Before I joined the military, I didn't have the discipline to get myself over that hump. And so my undergrad is psychology, so with a concentration in deviance. And like, that doesn't really feed very well into my master's in cybersecurity, right? However, I was able to use a lot of those soft skills and things I picked up when it came to management. So it didn't necessarily help me out with cyber, but it does help me out with my project management, right? So there's things you can do that will both help you to grow within the profession, but it also lends itself to content. So like, if program's not your thing, don't get a GitHub. Maybe your thing is writing, like you talked about, you're a technical writer. So then that's blogs, that's training material, that's guides and aids and things of that nature. That again shows that you still have this prowess, whether it be technical or non-technical, within the field. So I think all those things are great that you brought up, and it lends itself well to the audience, because a lot of them are, doing major changes, like they used to be in law or medical, or like you saw with Tish, she was a flight attendant, things of that nature. So there's a lot of people wanting to come over to cyber, and there's a lot of space and opportunity for them. But just because you're not following someone else's path doesn't mean that there isn't a path for you to get into the field. So I think all that stuff's great. I definitely want to include all those links in the description as well, to the Pathways program, or any other initiatives that you want to share, because I know some of them are specifically for people of color, but other are for people who are underserved or underprivileged, and it transcends race, right? But before we go, I definitely want to ask you a couple more questions, right? Like, the first question being, what do you do outside of the field? So I know a lot of us still do stuff outside of our daily jobs. We still do things that are still of the field. So I get it. Like, my hobby is podcasting about cybersecurity. I should be taking a break right now. I should be fishing, but that's not what does it for me. But what do you do to unwind, like with whether it be with the family, or for you to blow off some steam? Like, what do you do outside of work?
So let's see, outside of work and outside of the family, which definitely keeps me busy, I would say gaming, traveling. I've gotten back into running. So yeah, that was actually motivated by my doctor, because he told me my A1C levels were kind of high. So got back out there. And man, since they told me that, and I got back into running for the past 3 months, I lost 15 pounds.
Oh, wow.
15,
Okay.
yeah, in a good
Congratulations.
way. So no, it's definitely got me back into that, something that I used to do all the time when I was younger. And movies. I'm definitely into movies. So I would say, yeah, those things, I would say generally.
Okay. What's out of the movies you watched recently, which one stood out to you? Like, which one would you like? Okay, this was good.
Oh man. See, recent, how recent?
In the past, like since the pandemic, we'll go there.
Oh man. Man, I'm so jealous of my son's generation, man. They got a Super Mario movie. That movie was well done.
Yeah, is
So
out there killing it right now, making so much
yes.
money.
Let's see, what else would I say? Hmm. I go. I'm drawn by. I have seen some good movies.
You've seen the recent
Megan.
Spider-Man? Which one?
Yes, Megan.
Megan. Okay, so
The
that's
one
on
about
stream now. I've not watched it yet. Is it
oh,
good?
no, I thought it was good. I have a twisted sense of humor, so I laughed
Okay,
like the
so it's
whole
funny
time.
though.
To me, I don't
Okay.
know if it was trying to be funny, but it had me when the dog got on all fours and chased a little boy through the woods. It had me then.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
So it is streaming. I've been debating if I was gonna watch it or not. So I'll probably add it to the queue.
that, and I'm trying to think the last since the pandemic. One that was again I think it once I found out who made the movie, I'm not going to tell you who made the movie because a lot of people are surprised unless you already seen it. Was the Kitchen. That was a good movie too because
Kitchen.
I didn't
Oh, so
really
that's
know.
on Max. So that's streaming, right?
I think it is. I'm not sure. I
Yeah, I
think
seen
it
the
is. Oh, your sound went out.
Oh, apparently when you hit the
Oh,
space bar, because I tapped the space bar, it mutes you. I learned something new today. So I saw the trailer for it and it looked super like intense, but I'm like, what is going on here?
that was my impression too. So I had like no idea what the movie was about, and I think like me and my wife, we wanted to go to the movies that weekend, but that was like the only thing that was interesting that was out. So we just went to go see it because we really didn't know like what it was about. No, when you see it, I'm trying not to. It's not even any spoilers in the movie. It's like once you find out who made the movie, then everything's going to make sense. But I
Okay.
can tell you this: the movie ambiguously kind of takes itself seriously, but if you're paying close enough attention, like it's hilarious. Like I laughed all through that movie, and I kind of felt like I shouldn't be like I'm like laughing at stuff I should not be laughing at. But like once I found out who made the movie, it made perfect sense.
Okay. Okay.
So,
I'm gonna add that to the list. So Megan
yeah,
and the kitchen. I'm
yeah,
gonna
the
add those to
kitchen.
my list. And this is getting longer and longer. Guys, got to watch Extraction 2 and so a few other action flicks that Shannon put me on. So to wrap it up, right? So we talked about your origin story. We talked about how your path to cybersecurity was through the federal government, right? And then your passion to with family stuff to knock out the like to do you had other things aside from just trying to achieve cyber, right? But you
Absolutely.
got there still fairly quickly. Um, and
Oof, I don't
then
know if I say that.
well, so I say it to say like because cyber's been around like for decades, right? But now it's
Oh,
like the hot issue. So like you have decades of experience. So I'm not trying to belittle any of that. But what I'm trying to say is like people just think like you're just going to jump right out of school and you're going to jump right into a $200,000 job.
I thought that,
And I don't
yeah.
like to discourage people because that may be your path, right? You might be blessed. You might come out, hit the lotto. So I don't want people to not think that, but I want people to be more realistic. Like a lot of people I don't want them to be discouraged because they feel like it's taking a long time.
Mhm.
Like again, everybody's path is different, right? I've been doing it for 20 years. Some people have been doing it for 10 years, right? And then maybe they again, like I applaud everybody for where they're going and how they're doing it, but they chose a different path, and then that way they got to a higher position potentially quicker than me, or the opposite. Like I'm ahead of some of my peers, and we started the same DoD path, right? But we chose different pathways to get to where we want to be. But don't let any of that discourage you. Like eventually you'll get to where you want to be. It's just you have to figure out what path it takes to get you there. So I like how I've talked to several different people, right? So like I think you're the first person I've talked to um, who did the internship with the federal government on the way through college, right? So that's a pathway. Like so educate like because people are like again that debate is certs over education over experience, but your path was education and experience, right? While you're pursuing your education, you're gaining the experience to get your foot in the door to the federal government, and then you can pivot to the agency of your choosing once you hit those goals that you had, right? You had certifications you wanted to knock out that will get you to the position that you want to get to. But again, it's laying that path, and I think a lot of people are they're not being disingenuous, but they're just showing their path on social media, and it's frustrating to people because they're like, "Well, I did
Yes.
those things, I didn't get there." So it's good to have that wide range of experiences, especially again, this platform is for people who look like us, who are people of color who are trying to break into cybersecurity, because we don't make up huge numbers, right? Like we're at 9%, and that's big
And
for us, but that's
I
not
wanted
as big as it should be.
I want to speak on that. Because yeah, a lot of your episodes I've heard on that, but I guess my experience, I mean, no doubt that's true. My experience with that has been like real different. And it may be because of the HBCU experience, or maybe the region that I'm in.
Gotcha.
But almost like in every federal job, or just overall in my career, or just kind of coming up, I
Mhm.
feel like it's always been like a huge representation, like in IT, and even in information security. There's been a lot of Black folks.
Yes,
Um, uh,
and so I would agree with you, especially when it comes to like, so yeah, the North Capital region, of course, or if you're in
right.
Atlanta, and like you said, I didn't go to HBCU, jealous, right? Like I wish I had gone that path, but it's just not where I came through. But I think it's the federal government is doing a better job than everybody else. Like, so I'm DOD, right? Like, so I saw it's a melting pot. Like I saw people of color. I've seen lots of women in IT and cybersecurity. And I was just like thinking like that's the norm. But then when you look at the outside, right? Because we're kind of in a bubble, like fortunately, to a certain extent. But when you get out to the private sector, it's not like that. Not only just from the stats, but just like when you look around the room, you're just like, man, it's just me.
and that's
I'm the
kind of
only one here.
and that's kind of another reason why I wanted to stay on the federal side, because it's just like that was consistent as far as what I ran into. And when I did have job opportunities or worked outside of the federal sector, I did notice that it was different, wasn't as diverse. So no, but no, definitely kind of sticking mostly to the federal side. No, it was diverse, especially with Black folks. And then at each phase, I always was able to have Black men in each phase to be able to pour into me somehow. So
Right. Get that mentorship. Right.
that was very very helpful, very what's the word I'm trying to think of? Um,
Encouraging, support.
very and right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's the same thing in the military, right? So like I talk a lot about my military experience, and hopefully that makes someone pivot and think about joining the military, right? And no, it's not for everybody, but I think that's like there's a lot of paths that people aren't looking at when it comes to whether it be the Department of Defense, or whether it be like Homeland, or some of the other agencies. Like joining the federal government does have its perks, as well as it helps with the education benefits. There's a path to promotion, right?
mhm.
There's a lot of protections built in there as well that are on the outside. And I think it's just a matter of showcasing that, right? So like it's good having people like you on the show who can talk about their experience and how it was positive, and you were able to progress to where you're currently at. And then who knows what the future holds. When I have you back on the show, you're like, hey, I'm president now. So and that's the connection I need. I'm like, yep, Secretary of Defense right here. But in all
Appreciate you
seriousness,
speaking that into existence.
but
Like,
in all
don't know if
seriousness,
I want that job, but
yeah,
I
right.
appreciate
Yeah, no, thank you.
it.
But I think I think it really helps to grow, right? Like we have like your Aisha Hollins on the show, where she is a pioneer in her field, and an author, and a PMP and all that good stuff, a founder and CEO of her company. I talked to her and her future co-host Miguel. He comes from the federal as well, but is FBI, right? He's an
Yeah, FBI.
FBI
Okay,
agent.
I remember seeing those episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to like I like a lot of people are like starting to contact and reach out to get on the show, and they all have different areas of expertise. I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're going for. So I thank you for connecting with me and asking, about the show, and how you can support. Because I think a lot of people, a lot more people are starting to reach out now, like yourself. But the opportunity is always out there, is what I want to try to put out there. Like, I don't necessarily like, I do have people I would like to speak with, only because I want to speak to them as well. So I think it'd be great to bring in the audience, but also you can volunteer yourself. And if it's a good conversation, then it's going to be a great conversation regardless. And then you get to bring your background in as well. So thank you for reaching out, because this is a good conversation.
No, thank you for having a platform.
Yeah, no doubt. And then obviously this is also making connections, right? Like, you never know what the future holds. Perhaps something coming down the pipe where I'm like, I know a guy, for that, or vice versa. You'd be like,
I
oh
was gonna
yeah,
say
I know this
likewise.
guy. He has some content out there you should listen to. But you can't be shy when it comes to LinkedIn and making these connections. So I definitely want to push that out there as well. Or if your platform's Twitter or something else, I'm not as versed in those, but I know your YouTubes, your Twitters, those social media aspects of it can get you into certain doors as well. So it's so many different pathways, and I'm glad you can come on the show and then present another one. Like, hey, this is a way to also get to where you may want to be in the future. So with that being said, thank you for your time being on the show. We're gonna have all your links and stuff in the bio. Definitely, like, I'm putting you out there. I'm putting you on Front Street. I don't know if you want connections, but
Oh
if
no, please do. The more the better.
if you like
Oh,
what you heard, you want to ask him some more questions on your own, definitely connect. We'll have your bio in there, and I'm going to have you also shout it out as well. And then any content that you have that you want to share that with me as well, and I'll push it out to the audience. And I'm going to definitely look forward to seeing what you're doing in the future. And then, do you have anything that you wanted to push out at the end?
sure. One thing I was going to recommend those that networking, that connection thing. I would recommend this book right here, the Proximity Principle.
Okay.
So that specifically, it's basically professional networking 101. It's a good read as far as telling you how to get into close proximity to where you want to be in your career. And just some imparting advice. I would just say know how to spot an opportunity. Just no opportunity is just too small. Any opportunity to kind of get to where you're trying to go to, take it. Always find an extracurricular activity that's going to challenge you. Again, being able to channel that same energy that got you through that. You're a person of faith, thinking of how God got you through that, so you'd be able to channel that same energy, that same memory, and press forward when it comes to your career goals. Whatever you do, don't quit, no matter how hard it seems. You just never know how close you were before you had quit. Just keep at it. And I would definitely say, like we just been kind of beating it, the dead horse over and over here. Leverage those relationships, and also just be willing to make the necessary sacrifices to make some of your career goals happen.
Absolutely. So yeah, all great advice. I can't top any of that. Definitely continue to tune in to the podcast, like, share with your nerdy friends. And then obviously you got to connect, right? So we'll have all of your information in the bio. Where can people find you at?
So people can find me mainly on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on Facebook as well, but probably LinkedIn would probably be the best place if you want to talk about, I guess, a professional connection. Outside of that, that's pretty much I'm an old head, man, when it comes to this social media stuff. So yeah, it's basically mainly Facebook and LinkedIn for me. Same name, Daryl Brooks. Daryl Brooks on LinkedIn is Daryl Brooks CISSP. If you type that in, you should be able to find me.
There it is. And then you can hit me up. I'm at RY Security Guy. That's RY Security Guy on LinkedIn, Clubhouse, and Twitter. So definitely hit me up if you have any questions. I'm always willing to answer them. And then if you would like to be on the show, we can have that conversation. I got to just vet you, make sure you're not crazy first. So that's the
I made
goal.
it, so
You made it. But yeah, definitely continue to tune in. And then this episode should either go up this week for the 4th of July week or the following week. But again, thank you for your time. It was a great conversation.
likewise. And yeah, thank you for your time, and happy 4th, and thank you for your service. I appreciate it, sir.
Oh, appreciate that, man.
No
And then
problem.
for all you guys out there listening, continue to again tune in. We appreciate your patronage and stay safe, stay secure.